Hi, this is Brandon. Let's take a look at some UVs. Before you get started, I highly recommend doing a mesh cleanup. Located here, choose the dialog box. For more information about mesh cleanup and how to solve the problems if mesh cleanup doesn't fix the issue, there's a link in the description. All right, first of all, we're going to change the workspace from general to UV editing. Now, as you can see here, these UVs are a mess. Now, for creating new UVs, my personal favorites are either automatic, camera-based, or best plane. Find a plane, the best plane, and you can select two or a few, and then hit enter. And this will literally project based on the angle of the planes that you just selected. Now, for this particular model, I think what I would like to do is automatic. Now, this is going to make a bit of mess things. That's okay. I'm going to select automatic. I'm going to go to edges, select all the edges, shift, right click, move, and sew. This is going to make a gigantic mess. That's the idea for now. What this does is it guarantees all the edges are sewn together so I can custom cut my UVs how I want them cut. Now, this particular dagger is designed to be used in a game res. It is pretty much the same on the front and the back. So what I'm going to utilize is UV stacking. Now, one of the best ways to stack UVs is to cut it in half, lay out those UVs, then mirror it. As you mirror, those UVs will be copied over exactly how you want them stacked already. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the multi-cut. If I want to delete this side of the model, I need to make sure I have a line running down the center of the entire model. Now with my view cube up, I want to delete the back and keep the front. Based on my front, let's turn it to the right. That means I will delete this side. I do want to keep track of which side I'm deleting so I can be consistent throughout my model. Just going to select all these faces here. I'm hitting space to switch windows. Just check and make sure these are the ones I want deleted. And delete. I'll continue this throughout the rest of the model. Now that half my model has been deleted, I can now begin to lay these out. I'm going to cut this here, shift, right click, cut. Now this is window specific. If I do shift, right click in this window, I'm going to get different options versus shift, right click in this window. So anytime I'm working with UVs specifically, I need to go to this side. Sometimes I will isolate a piece of the model just to make sure I've got everything selected like I need to. I'm also, this particular piece here in the center, I'm going to remove this as well because this is going to be a jewel in the middle and I may want to add a little more resolution by scaling this part of the model up. Now in order for this to lay flat, because I have a ridge running through the center of each of these prominent pieces, I'm going to have to cut these edges so that this object can lay flat. The whole goal of laying out UVs is basically to take your 3D model, cut it up into pieces you can lay flat so that you can then paint and then rewrap around the model itself. Now, it's important to make smart cuts. And the reason I'm cutting here is because if I attempted to lay this flat, it's going to distort things. In fact, we'll go ahead and illustrate that here. If I only cut this piece, and select this UV shell, I can go to unfold, unfold, and lay this out. Now one way to test and make sure that my UVs are being laid out correctly is this little checker box right up here. Now down here, this is where my UVs have not yet been laid out, and this is a terrible mess. This piece corresponds with what I just laid out here. And if we look, this is quite distorted. We want a nice, even, laid out checker pattern. Now this little icon next to the checkerboard, if I shimmy this over a little, this icon will display whatever my texture is here. And the checkerboard will lay this checkerboard pattern over the top. So I can leave that here. Now if I select this, cut this, go to UV shell mode, and unfold, these are going to look Still a little bit distorted, but at least these squares are more uniformly laid out. I have another trick here in a moment where we will straighten this shell out to make this look a little bit better. We'll get there in a moment. I'm going to continue working around the model, and any major plane change, I want to cut these UVs. This one, this plane change is not significant enough to worry about, so I'm going to leave that one intact. So now that all of my UVs have been cut in some seams that I estimate would be appropriate for them, I'm going to select all the UV shells. Again, go to the Unfold tab in the UV toolkit, click Unfold. Now the next thing I'm going to do is select Layout, which is under Arrange and Layout. This is going to do two things for me. This is going to lay all my UVs out. It's also going to make sure that the texel density is consistent across each piece. Texel density is the relative size of each UV shell to its counterparts. So if I had one particular piece that was significantly larger or smaller, the texel density would then change. If this is much larger, the squares over here get smaller. That's because I'm literally scaling this up and it's creating more detail here. Now you can understand the problem if I were to go from here to here and the texel density changed dramatically. We don't really want that. Now, looking at my reference image, I'm now deciding if this was a smart cut or if I should be cutting somewhere else instead. Anywhere that's got a major plane change is the best place to put your cuts. Sometimes you can also do that with a material or color change. So this area right in here, right up through here, would be ideal. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. So I can sew these back together by selecting the edges, Shift, right-click, Move and Sew, and it reconnects this edge. Now if I zoom in here, look at my concept art here again, I can do on this top ridge, or I'd almost really rather go in where this steel color and this gold color match up. Now I've got my purple jewel ending here. I've got this plane change up and this plane change down. And that is where I want to make this cut. Also coming down in here, that would be an ideal place to make a cut as well. I'm going to follow this around, bring this down in here, Shift right click, cut. We also need to grab this small little edge right in there. Make sure you have both sides. Cut. Now we have two shells. All right, now if I select all of these, I'm going to go right click, UV shell, select everything, layout. When I lay out these UV shells, I want them to be as vertical or as horizontal as possible. If I have anything that is diagonal, such as this, or even worse, this. Now I do realize that this blade, the edge is curved. However, especially on your seams, what's going to happen is we get stepping. If you have any straight line going vertical or horizontal, these pixels will line up vertically or horizontally in a perfect line. But no matter how high resolution you get, you're going to get some kind of stepping when things are set on a diagonal. And again, you can't get this completely perfect. The idea is to get them as vertical and horizontal as possible. One really easy way to do that, instead of eyeballing it and turning this and just trying to make it fit, if I select edge and then find an edge that is vertical or horizontal, I want to grab an inside edge, not an outside edge. And then I can go over here under Arrange and Layout, Orient to Edges. And that will snap that completely vertical for me. And I'm going to continue doing this with all these other pieces. Again, selecting inside edges. I'm going to select Orient Edges. Now something else what I want to do, I want to make sure, if possible, that these are oriented in the way that I can make sense when I go to paint them. I want this UV layout to make sense to me when I look at it in a program like Substance Painter or Photoshop. So if I have the bottom edge on top, I'm going to have to paint this design upside down. Again, if I look at my concept art, I've got this design on this handle in here. I don't want to be painting that upside down. I want to paint that right side up. So I'm going to identify where the bottom is, down here, where the top is, select the shell. Now if I hold down J, the J key as in Joker, hold that down, rotate around, it will snap in, I believe, 15-degree increments, which is very, very, very helpful. I'm going to continue working around with these. Now, if you notice here, 2 of these are highlighted. This means that I have the symmetry on, which in this case is not going to work for me. If I select this and rotate these, puts one right side up and one upside down, and I can't control them individually. So fastest way to get to symmetry, W, left click, symmetry, off. Back to UV shell, E to rotate, J to snap. Now these 2 pieces in here are a little bit odd shaped. So what I'm going to do is try to orient them in the direction that they are existing on the actual model. So I can even go over here and find something that is fairly vertical. This one here, this inside edge. Select the other side, orient to edges, and turn these around. Again, this is curved, so I'm just going to do the best I can to lay this out somewhat horizontally. Right click, UV shell, select everything, layout. Okay, so what I mentioned earlier about these UVs here, this UV shell. Oh, we need to cut that as well, actually. Let's go to edge, cut, select the shell, select both, unfold. All right, now in order for us to lay this out flat, and the reason I want to do that is if I want to paint a line running horizontally through here, like a shine or some kind of accent piece or something, with just this piece here, I would have to carefully paint across the center and pretty much eyeball it and just guess where I'm going to be painting. Now, the old way of doing this would be to probably break it in half and move it and go to straighten UVs. But you see, this causes an issue here. I have to manually move this around, and that's just too much time. Go to object mode first to get out of the UV set. Go to multi-cut, and I'm going to put a temporary edge loop in here. Now, when I say temporary, I'm adding this because I'm going to delete it in a moment. The only reason I'm adding this is for this little trick I'm going to show you. So if I double click to select this edge, this piece up here, and now I use straighten shell, it will straighten the shell along that edge. Now, obviously not completely done here. These edges still need to be straightened up. So now I select the UVs and straighten UV. And I can repeat this process. I'm just going to rotate these first. So what I can do is do these individually and then hit the G key. G is in good. Good, Maya, good. Space these out so I can grab the UVs. Now what I can do is select these UVs and these UVs. This is not dependent on each UV shell. So I can straighten those to automate that a little bit. And now that these are nice and straight, the first thing I want to do actually is over here, select all these, shift, right click, delete edge. So it's just a temporary edge loop, just literally to use this feature to straighten those out. It's very, very, very handy. Okay, so now select all these again, lay out UVs. I actually want this piece in here because I'm going to mirror this in a moment. This seam I cannot rely on. So I'm going to go in and select this edge, which correlates to this edge here. Actually, here, let's grab it on the model, make it a little easier to see. If I have a hard time seeing something, I can always go to the X-ray view. Okay, now if I don't want to go back and hand select this again, I'm going to hit W, left click, symmetry, turn on symmetry just to select it, then turn it right back off. Now it's selected. I'm going to go back over here, shift right click, cut. All right, now, just to be sure, I'm going to move these out of the way because I do not want to redistribute those, but I want to take these and I'm going to unfold them once again, just to make sure we can get these looking a bit more how they need to. And now I'm going to lay out again. Now these have obviously shifted, so I'm going to select these inside edges. Not the outside edges, the inside edge. If I select the outside edge, it will select its neighboring edge. And watch this. It will do both of them. We do not want to do that. So I'm going to select the inside edge, orient edges. Because we affected these, I want to make sure that these are all still how I want them. And while we're at it, let's do these. Select those edges, orient edge, Much better. Select them all, layout again. All right, already we're looking better. Now, another problem that we have here is there's a whole lot of wasted space up here. Now, part of the reason I cut right along here was I can scale some of these other shells up, and this seam will hide that change. Now, this is to be done with caution. The biggest reason that I want to do this is I want to add some detail, more textile density than I had before, like this jewel, for example. This is kind of a highlighted piece here, and I want to be able to paint more detail in that. So if I scale this up, it's going to make our squares smaller. Now, because I have this entirely separated, it's not going to be noticeable. Now, I can do this with certain things. I'll do this with characters. Sometimes I'll make their eyeballs bigger so I can paint more detail in the iris. Instead of just getting some tiny pixels, I can get bigger iris on there. The danger of doing this, however, this needs to be proceeded with caution. The danger of doing this, see how it affects all of these? Now, if I'm going to do this, I want to scale these up pretty uniformly. Because I have this seam here, that's the only reason I can really get away with this. And even then, I do not want to go too far. And part of the reason I'm doing this is so much of the UV space was wasted because of this piece being so large. The textile density is being set to match this, which is good. We want that typically. On the rare occasion, such as this, we can enlarge these a little bit so that we have a little bit more space to work with, because we do not want any of our UV space to be wasted if we can help that. Also, on my concept art, there's less detail on this. There's almost kind of just some softer details on the blade, but the detail in here, I want to define that detail a little bit more. Now, if I were to go select all these and lay out after I scale these up, it shrinks them back down. It resets my textile density. In this case, I don't want that because I want to be able to maintain this size change that I've done. Okay, so now what I can do, select all of these. Now my next largest piece here is this one here. And I can really only scale as big as I can still fit this in, because if I go too large, I won't be able to fit this either. So now what I can do, if I hit the D key, D as in dog, I can move this gizmo. And if I bring it down over here on this corner, go back to R, I can scale up in this direction, well, really in all directions. I don't want to stretch them. I'm going to scale it universally. However, I'm watching over here to see if this piece will still fit. So now what I can do is move all these out of the way, make sure this still fits. I do want to make sure and have a little bit of space in here, and see how this is cutting over just a little bit. I don't really like that. So I'm actually going to repeat that, hit the D key, bring it back over here, R to scale, and I'm going to shrink it down just a little bit. All right, now that's a little bit better. Something to remember, I need some padding in here so the textures don't run into each other. In fact, on this one, I really want to bring this down just a tiny bit because this is pretty much touching the top and touching the bottom. The danger in doing that is UVs actually tile. So if I were to run a strip all the way across, I could tile my texture from point to point to point. I could even stretch the UVs past this. If I did that, however, where this leaves off, this picks up. Imagine this piece is moved and this so on, so on, so on. It tiles or repeats itself forever. All right, so with those adjusted, I'm going to replace these in here. Let's take this, maybe set this up top. Let's see, how else can we fit these in here? We can, larger piece, put this down over here. Really, I'm just going to start kind of fitting these in by hand wherever best I can. If I wanted to say something like this where they're opposing each other, I could go into the Align and Snap tool in here and utilize these over here. If I select them both and select this here, this will align them both horizontally and stay with each other. Oh, looks like I might have missed one here. All right, so really quickly, multi-cut, select the edge, straighten shell, UVs, straighten UV. Alrighty, these I think I'm going to take and rotate one of these, kind of pair these together, and I can align these vertically as well. Oh, can't forget to delete that. Shift right click, delete edge. bring these over in here. These have been cut. What I could actually do is merge these together. Shift right click, moving so, align. Could fit right over there maybe. Let's see, I can actually maybe enlarge these a little bit more. I don't want to go too much further. Let's take these, not that one. Let's do that about where that's at. I'm gonna stretch these just a little bit bigger. Now again, I do this with caution. I do not recommend this for every piece. It just so happens that I had a seam in here that fit really well. So this transition will not be too bad. Just continue to move these around a little bit till everything seems to fit. It's a little bit like playing Tetris. I can just kind of continue to move these around until I feel like they are about where I want them. Now there's still a little more space in here than I would love, and I'd almost rather kind of reposition these than give them a little more space. And just finesse this till it works, till it looks good. All right, now once I am happy, or at least relatively happy, I can always adjust this later. What I'm going to do is go back and we're going to mirror this back. Now, again, the purpose of stacking a UV is to do two things. One, it's to save space in my UV 0 to 1 space. Two, it also makes it so I don't have to paint both sides. So if I paint this blade, I'm painting it once, and it will show up on the other side. Now, I'm not going to want to mirror something that I'm going to see both sides of all of the time, right? Like on these, say these end pieces, right? If I wanted to say, you know, mirror, I could technically cut this and mirror this over as well. However, I want some diversity in here. I want this side to look a little bit different than this side to create some interest. Now, I'm never going to see this back side and this front side at the same time. Am I seeing these at the same time? Yes, so we're going to leave those be. But it's even on an angle, that is going to be very hard to see both sides there. So now we're going to do, say we'll select one piece, and I'm going to go to, so I'm just hold down spacebar to get this, hold down. Now if I tap spacebar, I will change these views. But if I hold down spacebar, I get this lovely menu. And this menu is essentially all of these menus up here, just arranged right here where I can bring my mouse a little faster. This is a nice speedy time-saving menu set. This is one of the things I love about Maya. I was a little intimidated about this for a long time. I would always go, you know, click up here until I really realized it correlates. It is the same thing. So mesh, I've got mesh, same menu as mesh up here, right? Anywho, so go to mesh, mirror, which again is the same thing as mesh. Hold it down. I'm holding spacebar and just left click and mirror. And when I mirror, I want to grab this dialog box. I'll bring up these options. Now the reason I want to do this is because if I just hit mirror, it's going to go with my last saved or last attempted mirror, but really I need to determine which direction I'm working with this in. Now, typically, if I'm working on a model, I'll mirror right to left, but in this case, I want to go front to back. And instead of the X going left and right, I want to go front to back, which is Z. Maya is Y up. So if I wanted to mirror vertically, I could do that as well. But we're going to go Z, and in the negative, which looks like we're set up here for, truly best practice would actually be go to the side view, or whatever my split view is. Very carefully grab all of the UVs that are going to be on this mirrored seam. Now I like to double check, go to my 3D view, make sure I got everything here. Got them all, okay. And now up here, sometimes this is hidden, but this little tear out, what I can do now is, again, I'm looking in the Z direction. So if I hit 0 here and enter, it will zero everything out in the Z direction. And what this is going to do is it's going to guarantee that I get a good mirror front and back. So we'll apply. Sometimes to check it to make sure it worked out okay, I will double click. And my edge loop should go along until I hit a triangle, just like we did here. Just double click again. Okay, yeah, so we're looking pretty good there. So I'm just going to continue with the model. Now this right here, this is why I like to check and make sure that all of those vertices are on 0. This vertice is not on 0. Neither are the rest. Just to show an illustration of this, just the one vertice hit 0 and it shifts it over. So we'll undo that. Undo all the way. And I'm going to, so isolate this. Actually, let's go sideways. Isolate it. Now the grid view, you can actually see something happened. Something got twisted here. So I'm going to select these vertices. And again, I always like to check, make sure I got everything that I wanted to and nothing that I didn't. So I don't want those moved over. I just want these. Go to Z, 0, enter, object mode, apply. The edges, much better. Again, we're hitting triangle edges down here, so that's why those aren't going to select. Those are good, those are good, those are good, and as are those. All right, fantastic. Now the reason I double click and select the edges is sometimes if there's a stray vertice and I'm selecting something, say here, it doesn't continue all the way up. Like there actually. That should continue going all the way up. So if I select this, this did not connect. Sometimes this happens. This is why I check. I want to make sure all my vertices do in fact mirror and connect correctly. And if something like this happens, I slide it to the side. In fact, I'm going to, there's two ways I can fix this. I can go shift, right click, merge vertice, target weld, and take care of that. Or undo till I bring it back. To make sure this didn't happen anywhere else, select my vertices, select all the vertices. I do want to have my poly count or tri count up. This also shows the vertice count. So right now we're at 280. We're going to go to edit mesh, merge. Now that dropped down to 272. So that tells me that I lost some vertices there, which is exactly what I wanted to see happen. That was actually quite a few, so that's interesting how that mirrored incorrectly. So yeah, if I just double click, that selects correctly. Double click, perfect. All right, moving on. So we still have this part of the model to worry about. Sometimes I do like to isolate these when I mirror them. All right, again, we'll go and select my vertices to make sure I'm mirroring correctly. Sometimes I've mirrored something, not realized things are off. Hours later, I realize that I've messed something up. It's kind of a pain to take care of, so it's just best to mirror correctly from the beginning. Okay, object mode, hit apply. Double check this, looking good. Looking good. All right, we're done with that. Object mode. All right, now this is a setting in my mirror settings. As I mirrored these did not mirror correctly. They flipped over. That is not what I want to happen. The whole point of cutting this in half and mirroring it is to stack these. This did not happen. This is why I love unlimited undo in Maya. In fact, I've got another video about that as well. Unlimited undo, setting your unlimited undos in Maya. Very, very, very helpful. Okay, so we're all the way back here. Just to save time, I'm going to zero everything out all at the same time. The only thing to be cautious with selecting everything at once is I do want to double check and make sure I grabbed everything I needed and nothing more. Looks like we're good. Go to Z, hit 0, perfect. All right, so go mesh, mirror. Now something I can do is go in and if ever I'm not sure if a tool has been changed, if there's a problem with it, I can go to edit, reset settings. All right, so now that moved me to my X, so I'm going to go to the Z. Now what this has done, this unchecked flip UVs. After resetting the settings, we are going to go in the Z in the negative. Flip UVs is unchecked. Hit apply. Again, I want to make sure that everything mirrored correctly. So we're having a little issue here. So we need to go through, undo this. So what happened there is I accidentally grabbed a vertice that I should not have grabbed. I can manually pull this out or again, just undo. So undo until that's still selected. Shift click to deselect that. I'm going to move these in the 0 on the Z. All right, we're going to select everything and go to mesh mirror in the Z in the negative. Flip UVs unchecked. Apply. Take a a look here. See, something's happening when this mirrors over, which is fine. We just need to be aware of these problem areas and be ready to take care of them. So I'm going to isolate that. I'm going to go to vertice mode. Again, I'm back at 280. Edit mesh. Merge. 272. Something is happening when I'm mirroring that, so I just need to be cautious of that. Double check it. Select the edge. And we're looking much better. Now, something else with this here. I added this edge so I could mirror this over. I no longer need this edge. And I'm going to shift, right click, delete edge. Ah, but you see what that did? That caused a problem here. I'm all selected. Move and so. Now expect these to join together, right? But remember we stacked these. So I select UV shell, go to unfold. There they are. And we'll select these inner edges, orient edges. And we'll go in, and now we're going to delete these because I no longer need them. But I had to merge these together first before I could delete them. Shift right click, delete edge. And now what I can do is select both of these, and I can actually use this handy little button here, stack shells. All right. Now this moved a little. Let's go ahead and adjust this. All right, so now you can see our model is back whole and our UV shells are stacked. Now the reason we did not want to flip these UVs, because naturally if I were to unfold this, it would flip the other direction. Even if I wanted to line this up over here, select them both, stack shells, I can't UV this. This would cause a problem. So we'll just go ahead and undo that. But these are now nicely stacked. And looking pretty good. I can go in and adjust a few things if I need to. Remember, marquee select to move anything, because if I just click on it, I'm just going to grab one shell. That can get a little disorienting if you're not watching. Although one other thing I just realized, this sphere in here, I don't need to necessarily stack that. I could, but we've got some room in here. Let's go ahead and unfold. And I'm going to select these two edges, shift, right click, move and so. And again, I want to make sure I know which edge is which. Okay, that is my forward facing edge, orient edges. In fact, I'm going to rotate this 180 degrees. Something that I've realized, if I just go and turn this, especially if I'm holding down J, it gets a little hard to keep track of which way this is rotating and what's happening here. So I like to, again, identify which edge is which, so it's top, and I'm going to rotate this around so this edge is actually on the bottom. Back to show mode. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab where that edge was so I can manually watch it come around. Check that. That's exactly what I want. All right, now there's one last thing I'd like to do. Let's gridify this shell here. Now, what do I mean by gridify? I want to take and I want to straighten out this shell as much as possible. Again, I don't want to have any distortion when I go to paint this. When these seams do match up, there'll be just a little bit of distortion on the sides. In fact, we can take a look here. Because these are curved, this creates a curve here. Now, Substance Paint is where I'm heading, and it does a really good job with seams. But just for good practice, let's go ahead and straighten these UVs. There we go. Just straighten UVs under unfold, straighten UVs. That looks pretty good. All right, that's a pretty good UV layout. Next is going to be Substance Painter. That's about the bare bones of it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.